Okay, so let's get into the hydroxy conversation. You might have noticed that for the last week or so, Donald Trump and Fox News have very abruptly stopped talking about chloroquine, the medication that both Trump and Fox and some others in right-wing media have been promoting for weeks as if it's a miracle cure for coronavirus. And the reason they've stopped talking about it mostly is that more and more papers are being published almost daily that show that not only does hydroxychloroquine not appear to be effective in treating coronavirus, both with and without azithromycin, the Z-Pack, as Trump likes to say, it might actually be causing more death. Now, I want to be ultra crystal clear here. If you watch this program, if you listen to my podcast, if you know me at all, you know I am willing to accept anything that works for coronavirus. I don't care if Trump was the first one to mention it. I don't care if Ivanka herself synthesizes the treatment or cure. Personally, I want to treat people with therapeutics, a vaccine, whatever works, as soon as humanly and safely possible. I'm putting all politics aside because that's the most important thing. But from day one, Trump and Fox were going crazy promoting chloroquine as if it were a miracle cure before we really knew that much about it. Now, I also want to remind you that it wasn't wrong to hope chloroquine could work. We talked about chloroquine before Trump ever mentioned it. I don't know if it was 5 days before, 7 days, 9 days, something like that. I told you about chloroquine with azithromycin, without it. What we did, though, is I came to you and I said, here's a bunch of stuff that is being looked at. We're looking at chloroquine with and without azithromycin. We're looking at remdesivir, made by Gilead. We're looking at favipiravir, which is also called Avigan. That's a Japanese drug. We're looking at a combination of two anti-HIV drugs. There are studies being done about could the tuberculosis vaccine or the polio vaccine work not as a vaccine, but to trigger the particular type of immune response that might prevent someone or make it less likely that someone gets infected with COVID-19 in the first place. I mentioned to you dozens of things that were being considered and that we should look at scientifically, soberly, without becoming emotionally attached to anyone in particular. But for weeks, Trump and Hannity and Fox were going crazy about chloroquine. Remember this? Here's Hannity talking about, this is so irresponsible, prophylactic use of chloroquine with other things.
Mr. Vice President, I'm holding up a letter, and I'm going to read from it in a second, from a doctor in the New York area. And if I may read from it, he has now worked with his associates, and he has a regimen, hydroxychloroquine, 200 milligrams twice a day, 5 days. Azithromycin, 500 milligrams once a day, 5 days. Zinc sulfate, 220 milligrams once a day for 5 days. This is what he has seen. Him and his team have now treated approximately 350 patients in Kairos Joel, was an area of New York that was hit particularly hard, and another 150 patients in other New York areas. His results: we have had 0 deaths, 0 hospitalizations, 0 intubations.
Then, of course, Trump himself pushing this wildly.
And I hope they use the hydroxychloroquine, and they can also do it with Z-Pack, subject to your doctor's approval and all of that. But I hope they use it because I'll tell you what do you have to lose? In some cases, they're in bad shape.
What do you have to lose except possibly your life? And I could play dozens of examples of Trump saying this stuff. I won't do it today. Imagine that you just sat through 20 examples of that because they are out there. Here's a doctor telling the Blaze's Glenn Beck that the only reason people are questioning the efficacy of chloroquine is because Trump is pushing it. Of course, that's not true.
Here's a drug that's been around literally forever, hydroxychloroquine, right, and it is being treated like a pariah. Do you believe that this is happening because Donald Trump was behind it?
Absolutely. I absolutely
mentioned
think
it?
that is the reason. I absolutely think that's the reason. I think that's why people I have been attacked when I've treated patients with this, and we've seen improvement in the patients.
Well, you might have noticed that neither Trump nor Fox have been mentioning chloroquine very much unless someone else brings it up. And it's because many studies are finding there's a really big risk to taking the drug. There's a new VA study of 368 or 386 male veterans, and it found that 28% of those given chloroquine died, whereas only 11% of those who received the standard of care without chloroquine died. It's not definitive, but it doesn't look particularly good. It's not a perfect study. There's another study from Brazil with similarly concerning findings. Other studies are also finding that there seems to be no measurable positive effect from chloroquine. And there are people having serious heart issues. It's being tested both alone and with azithromycin. When Trump was promoting it, you saw Fox News promoting it constantly. Everyone has gone almost completely silent, with one exception from this morning, which I will get to in a little bit. So during week 1 of April, Fox News mentioned chloroquine 194 times. In the second week of April, Fox mentioned chloroquine 138 times. It declined a little bit. In the third week of April, Fox mentioned chloroquine 51 times. And this week, it is very, very few. Now, you might say, you know, it looked promising before, so they mentioned it. Now it's not looking as good, so they're not talking about it as much. So everything's fine. That's not really the issue, though. The issue is that they were touting it before, even with Hannity saying it could be taken prophylactically, when there was really no more reason to push chloroquine than Ativan or remdesivir or whatever else, other than Trump was promoting it like a miracle cure. Now, they're not really correcting the record. They're simply pretending it never happened. The right thing to do, the responsible thing to have done all along, would have been never tout it as a miracle cure from the beginning. Report on it as one of many treatments that's being explored. And now you can continue to report on it and say, we have all these studies now that say it's not working particularly well. Report properly about this stuff without the wild emotional propagandistic attachment. Tomorrow's briefing, it wouldn't shock me to see Trump, what, chloroquine? Listen, I'm not a doctor, whatever it's hydroxy, what was that? That's a nasty question and you should be ashamed of yourselves. Now they move on to the next round of disinformation, and it's mostly about testing, moving on from chloroquine altogether. Now, there was one notable clip about chloroquine this morning on Fox News, and that's what I want to talk about next. I've got something really cool today. The first 500 people who see this video and go to davidpakman.com/skill will get a premium membership to Skillshare for 2 months for free. Skillshare is the online learning community offering thousands of classes on almost anything you can imagine. Everything's taught by experts. The classes get split up into bite-sized lessons. So even if you're really busy like me, you can fit Skillshare into your schedule. There are classes on drawing, painting, photography, video editing, web design, running a small business. And that's not even scratching the surface. I got some great ideas from a recent class I took called YouTube Success. And even though we've been on YouTube for years, I still got a lot out of it. They have classes for every skill level, whether you want to get better at something you're already experienced in or you want to explore something totally new. And like I said, the first 500 people who see this video and go to davidpakman.com/skill will get a completely free premium membership for 2 months, giving you access to every class Skillshare offers. Check it out. I put the link right underneath this video.